Now, of course, the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition to Keir Starmer was, of course, before the chief prosecutor in this country. So crime is an area that he feels he can speak about with great authority. And actually, often in the House of Commons, he does. And he's raised a very strong and very valid point about people out of prison early on probation. And his point is 3 murders or sex attacks are carried out every week by criminals on probation. He is right to raise this issue, and he's right to ask how the probation service is being run. That doesn't necessarily mean, folks, that a Labour government would do it better, but he's right to ask these questions. But the question that he will never ask, and I say this because within the last 24 hours, a failed asylum seeker has been convicted of the murder of an 87-year-old woman, somebody who'd actually given him shelter in her own home. Keir Starmer never raises issues like that. And in fact, I've found that if you talk about those that have come into this country via the channel, in the back of lorries, and crimes they commit, whether they've been granted leave to remain, or more particularly, if they've failed their asylum claims yet not been deported, it's one of those taboo subjects you're just not supposed to discuss in polite society. But here on the Farage Show at GB News, we do not let things like that worry us at all. Out Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch, and you're familiar with finding sometimes these arguments are very difficult to permeate. What is the situation in terms of those, let's begin with the most really vivid, awful cases, those that come here illegally, fail their asylum claim. We're not deporting them, are we? Or not in sufficient numbers?
We're not, and particularly those who claim to be children, however old they look. I mean, there was the case of Loanjin Abdul Rahimzai that we heard about last week, was it? Who had actually murdered 2 people. He was convicted on drugs charges, and yet he was able to come here, claim he was 14 years of age, and it took 2 years to establish that he was nothing like that. He was actually an adult.
That was the Bournemouth murder, wasn't it?
That was the Bournemouth murder. That happens time and time again. What we've got in place at the moment is this web, really, of rules and obstacles and laws in some cases, which prevent people on acting even on common sense. I mean, this guy, Abdul Rahimzai, 14 years of age, he said, clearly looked a lot older. The border officials said, you're older, and yet they couldn't act on common sense. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. That happens time and time again. Of the 3,700, I think, or thereabouts, people who were to September last year, where the age was contested, over half of them were shown to be adults, not children at all. How many of those are removed?
So the absconding, you know, I mean, Parliament last week was full of MPs saying it's a disgrace that all these children have disappeared from hotels in Brighton and Hove was one particular hotspot for this. And in some cases, I've no doubt children have been taken out of those homes. But actually, the likelihood is then out that half of them actually weren't children at all.
Well, certainly those whose cases were considered and were resolved, that's what the fact was, that over half of them were, in fact, adults, not children. In addition to that, those who are released into the community with electronic tagging, do you know that last year, I think something like 2/3 of them had either tampered or removed those tags?
I've seen it on TikTok. Yeah, them showing you how to cut them off on TikTok. When it comes to crime, heinous crime, do we have any idea of the scale of this?
Do we have any? The Home Office from time to time will issue, or in fact we pick it up in newspapers, in reports, in court cases. But the Home Office will not say so many people were allowed to stay here, were not granted asylum, weren't removed, and then went on to commit heinous crimes. We had a cursory look last December at the press and some of the cases that have been thrown up. And we found, just like that, something like 16 of these sort of cases where people who had come here, that sought asylum, had been denied it, were never removed, and went on to commit heinous crimes, as you put it.
It's an absolute disgrace.
It is.
Keep up the good work, keep collating it. We will keep debating it and keep talking about it.